Alright, it's the Hawk. I recently made a video that examined the top 10 televised moments that made people stop watching TNA. These were moments that annoyed viewers so much that they threw down their remote in anger, threw a brick at their TV, screamed into a pillow and never watched TNA ever again. So it seemed only logical to do the same thing for the WWE. These aren't actually moments that I've picked myself. These are moments chosen by the squad. Me personally, there was never a specific moment I stopped watching it. It was sometime in 2002, that's all I know. It was just because my mates grew out of watching it, so I did too. It just wasn't considered cool anymore, and I can remember people getting bullied for admitting they watched wrestling. And the Hawk ain't no victim. I came back to it whilst living away from home for the first time in around 2010, and that didn't last too long either. I just found it boring with Cena beating everyone and corny stuff with the Great Khali and Hornswoggle. But there was no specific moment for me, I just drifted. And it feels like a lot of people find it tougher to blame an actual moment for why they stopped watching the WWE, and I'm not sure quite why that is. It's easy to pick on TNA moments, but not so easy with the WWE. Someone let me know why you think that is. I guess the majority of people just lost interest over time. A massive amount of you also say the passings of Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit made you stop watching. As those aren't televised moments, we can't use them, but I understand the sentiment there. A large part of my audience are internet wrestling fans who have stuck through a lot of rubbish. Call them the hardcores. Then there's the casual fans, the millions who disappeared, never to come back. I've tried to cater to both groups with this list. Anyway, I was able to dig out 10 actual televised moments that made people quit watching the WWE, so here we go. Number 10, Hell in a Cell 2019. On paper, this one doesn't sound like anything too bad. In the main event, Seth Rollins defended his Universal Championship in a Hell in a Cell match. Seth is supposed to be the babyface, but he doesn't get much of a reaction from the crowd, perhaps foreshadowing what's to come in this one. He defends it against the Fiend, Bray Wyatt. The Fiend was one of the few interesting gimmicks on the roster at the time. A lot of work has gone into his presentation, and one of those bits of presentation was a red light during his entrance. Unfortunately, they took this way too far and they leave the entire match blasted with this stupid red light. What is this, the red light district in Wolverhampton? Rollins is beaten up for 15 minutes, barely getting a punch in as he frantically dumps in his nappy and keeps running from the Fiend. Rollins literally couldn't do a thing without weapon use. Great heel-face dynamic we have here, WWE. Foley versus Taker Hell in a Cell, this match is not. It was like a cartoon childish violence version, and the stupid red light isn't helping. The fans start booing as Rollins hits his finisher time and time again. The Fiend keeps getting up and the crowd cheer every time. It seems like they've made their choice. The Fiend is eventually flawed, but he still kicks out of all the pins. If this match wasn't weird and dumb enough already, it has a suitably dumb ending. Rollins smashes a toolbox into a pile of weapons that were lying on top of the Fiend. Then he wants to use a sledgehammer, but the referee stops him. Yeah, great in a Hell in a Cell match. Seth eventually does do it anyway, and then the ref calls for the bell. So the match finishes in a no contest, and the crowd chant bullshit. But no official announcement was made to add to the confusion to the ending. Bray was deemed to be dead, but he wasn't dead, because seconds later he puts on the mandible claw. So why did the match need to be thrown out if he was fine anyway? The camera suddenly switches to a cinematic one as Bray chokes out Rollins with stupid music playing. The whole time the fans are booing, and then the show ends with a laughing stupid Bray Wyatt. A boring, slow, strange, confusing Hell in a Cell match that resembled something from TNA or WCW. The whole thing felt like a joke that none of us were in on. The fact is, they couldn't get away with this sort of thing in 2019 because now they have competition, and I'm assuming most people who hated this match switched the channel to their rivals. Number 9, Lesnar squashes Kofi Kingston. Kofi Kingston had a fairy tale rise to the top of the WWE. He spent so much time in the mid-card it felt like he'd never be able to break through that glass ceiling. But at WrestleMania 35, Kofi finally achieved his dream and captured the WWE title to much fanfare. Could this be the start of WWE finally putting some effort into building up the next generation of main eventers? Well, no. A few months later on SmackDown, Brock Lesnar challenged for Kofi's belt and he beat him in 9 seconds. This was a real punch to the gut that some fans could just not recover from. Whether or not you're a fan of Kofi, it must have felt like WWE was taking the piss and needed a jab to the jaw. Number 8, Royal Rumble 2015. People pretty much universally hate this pay-per-view, but there's 2 specific moments that cause it to make the list today. Daniel Bryan had been out with a neck injury for 9 months, and it was highly likely that Bryan wouldn't wrestle again for the WWE, but he somehow managed to return, and he entered the 2015 Royal Rumble at number 15. The entire Philadelphia crowd went crazy when his music hit. Bryan seemed genuinely taken back by his crowd support. The Yes movement was in full effect in this arena. Despite being the most popular person in the Rumble, his popularity didn't help him. He does manage to eliminate Tyson Kidd from the Rumble, but WWE fans were expecting him to do much more than that. Bray Wyatt eliminates Daniel Bryan from the match after about only 8 minutes. The crowd goes silent in disbelief. Then the silence turns to boos, as literally everything that happens in the match is booed. They also chant Daniel Bryan throughout the match. So that's moment 1. Fans felt like Vince and the WWE were deliberately ignoring Bryan's popularity and threw him under the bus to stick their middle fingers up at fans. Now reason 2 also happened during this match. The fans were already in a bad mood about Bryan. As the final guys were left in the match were established, fans didn't have anyone to cheer. It came down to Kane, Big Show, Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns. Fans were still booing everything at this point in the match. This Roman Reigns seems to be doing quite well, but then fans were even booing his attacks on Kane and Big Show. He looks confused. Then we get to the final three, Roman Reigns, Big Show and Kane and Big Show are working together anyway. At this point the crowd has made their mind up and they're chanting bullshit. Reigns was supposed to be cheered as he battled the two giants in a handicap situation, but he gets loudly booed. It was hardly an exciting choice out of these three guys. Then the moment happened. Reigns eliminates Kane and the Big Show at the same time, and the boos increase to fever pitch. Big Show and Kane come back and double chokeslam him before they send the Rock out to try and give the crowd some last shreds of happiness. Roman looks like he's gonna cry. Then it turns out that Rusev was never eliminated and the fans get excited for about a second. Reigns quickly throws him out to crush any hopes that they had. People tuned out because they wanted Bryan, but instead WWE insisted on trying to force Roman Reigns into a spot that he didn't deserve at the time. A horrible Rumble match. Number 7, Raw 25th Anniversary episode. This show's just sad. Taking place in January 2018, it was supposed to celebrate the success of Raw over the years, but instead it felt more like the end. It started out promising with a segment with Austin and the McMahons. That's until you realise that they're still trying stuff from 1998, 20 years prior. The whole episode just serves as a sad reminder that WWE doesn't have any stars anymore and no likeable wrestlers that they had in the past years. The whole thing was supposed to be a fun show to reminisce on good times, but instead it had an effect of making you miss the old times. You know what? Maybe it's time to stop watching the WWE. Look how old all my favourite wrestlers are, and there's nothing to look forward to. Depressing. I might have to cry into a brick tonight. Number 6, The Fiend Does The Job. Second entry for The Fiend on this list. This did come down to a fan poll, so I guess a lot of people like The Fiend in the modern WWE world. This one took place at Super Showdown 2020 in Saudi Arabia. 53-year-old Goldberg challenged for the Universal title in the main event, with The Fiend defending the title. Luckily, no permanent red light for this match, but that won't save it. Goldberg speared Wyatt in seconds. Then he hits a second one, a third one, a fourth one, all within 2 minutes. Another minute passes and Goldberg fights off the mandible claw and hits the jackhammer for the 3. The match can't have gone more than 3 minutes. The Fiend didn't do a thing to him, and then it seems like the Fiend is going to attack him after the match, but instead he runs away. Goldberg's win did nothing to endear him to the WWE audience, and they called him Oldberg. WWE once again relying on old wrestlers, but the way he squashed Bray Wyatt was unforgivable. Maybe this decision was made due to being in Saudi Arabia. The crowd didn't really seem to know who the Fiend was, but they went nuts for Goldberg. But who cares, the match sucks. It was also the most disliked WWE YouTube video of 2020. Sadly, with the dislike counter now gone, we won't know these sorts of things anymore. But at least I can finally make a video on my hatred of Chavo Guerrero and live comfortably not knowing how many of you hate the Hawk. Number 5, John Cena burying the Nexus. For this one, it was years of built-up resentment and anger from the fans at the way John Cena had been forced down our throats as the top guy. He had been pushed as Super Cena. No matter what happened, Cena come out on top of matches. I don't think it was that the Nexus were particularly popular, but it was because they were feuding with Cena. It made them a group to cheer. We all wanted to see the end of Super Cena. It was unbearable. And this is actually one that I caught at the time, so I understand the anger. The idea of a group of new talents all debuting at once in a massive faction seems like a good idea. The Nexus were rookies from NXT and they immediately started a fight with John Cena and they completely destroyed him and the set on their debut. So what's not to like? Well, unfortunately, 2 moments stand out as the worst. The first coming at SummerSlam 2010. The main event was a 7-man elimination tag, WWE vs Nexus. Of course, it came down to Super Cena. He was in a 2-on-1 disadvantage. Cena managed to survive a 2-on-1 stamping for several minutes, a DDT on the exposed floor on the outside, and then seconds later Gabriel missed a 450 and was pinned just like that. Another couple of seconds later and Cena makes Wade Barrett tap out as I smash my computer into bits. It can't have been more than a minute since he was debuted on the outside of the floor. How is he doing this? My burning rage needs to be controlled because it's not the only moment of Cena with the Nexus that I've got to talk about. Fast forward to Royal Rumble 2011. The Nexus is still limping along, now under the leadership of CM Punk. Punk entered the match at number 1 and it seemed like a well thought out plan. Punk was backed up by 4 Nexus members at a time and everyone who tried against him was eliminated from the match quickly. It was going well. Then John Cena's music hit, and I suddenly had a sinking feeling. CM Punk stays in the corner as Cena eliminates all the Nexus back up in a matter of seconds. Punk didn't do a thing to try and stop it. At least I didn't have to wait too long for that footage. It somehow got worse then as Hornswoggle and Cena beat up CM Punk, making the whole thing somehow seem like some kind of sick joke. The 2 most hated people in the WWE at the time beating up one of the most liked. 2 minutes later, Cena eliminates Punk. There was no coming back for this for the Nexus, and there was no coming back for this for some WWE fans. moments. Number 4, Triple H Reign of Terror. Look, this topic has been done to death, and I'm sure you're all aware of how much people hated this entire period of time. Triple H wasn't as damn good as he thought he was. He was a dance partner for the real stars. His promos were long and boring, but from 2002 onwards, we got a far bigger dose of Triple H than we could ever want. He dominated the main event scene. Now, it's hard to pick a specific moment that made you throw the remote down, but let's go for the Booker T match. Going into this one, Booker T had been treated as a joke, but he was starting to build up a legacy in the WWE. Triple H cut promos with hints of racism and called Booker T a criminal who wasn't good enough. That's why it seemed impossible that Booker T wouldn't be able to beat Triple H for the heavyweight title at WrestleMania 19. The story was written, it just needed to be published. Unfortunately, it didn't go that way. Triple H connected with the pedigree, and then he took 20 unbearable seconds to cover Booker T. It almost seemed like deliberate sabotage from the game. If he had to win, couldn't he have made Booker T look a bit stronger in defeat? Ultimately, the game said Booker T wasn't good enough and then proved himself to be correct in that statement. A match which left a really bad taste in your mouth. Number 3, Austin turns heel. The main feud which helped WWE to eventually win the Monday Night Wars was the feud between Austin and McMahon. McMahon was the annoying, vile boss that you hated, and Stone Cold was living our dreams by beating the hell out of him on a weekly basis for what felt like 3 years. The fans ate it up. But they'd done everything they could with this angle, and it felt like a change was needed. We arrive at WrestleMania 17, where we see one of the most controversial moments in WWE history. The Rock faced off against Austin, which is never going to be bad, but it is in the end. Towards the end of the match, McMahon appeared, and he pulled The Rock off Austin. Vince proceeds to smack The Rock with a chair whilst Austin holds him, and Vince won't stop interfering. Austin has now turned full heel, and he's smiling at Vince. Austin eventually wins after going nuts with a chair. And then the real moment that hurt, as Vince and Austin shook hands and shared a beer together. This seems ridiculous after everything that Austin and McMahon had gone for in the past. Austin had sold out and turned heel, and fans just didn't want to see it. It felt like the end of an era, and it felt stupid. And that's not me hating on the heel Austin character. I thought there were some real entertaining moments in there. Number 2, the end of the Undertaker's streak. The Undertaker's storied career had lots of ups and downs, but his WrestleMania streak was a real highlight. But a lot of fans were very unhappy about the way it was done in the end. So we're looking at WrestleMania 30 for this one. This isn't a terrible match, it's a little slow. The reason for the hate is the outcome. The Undertaker had never lost a match at WrestleMania, and he's come into this one with 21 wins. He faces Brock Lesnar, and it's clear at his age there's going to be no believable way that he's ever going to be able to beat Brock. And rightfully so, Lesnar wins the match. But it still somehow feels like a shocking moment. Now for the 2 reasons people tuned out. Reason 1, a lot of people hated the decision to have Brock Lesnar be the man to beat the streak. He had nothing to gain from winning this accolade. A lot of up and coming wrestlers could have really used the win to build their careers. Either that or just have Undertaker retire undefeated. It just didn't make sense. What was there to gain here? It feels like once again WWE aren't building towards their future. Undertaker himself has said he didn't agree with the decision of having Lesnar to be the man to beat him. Reason 2, this felt like the end of an era. For a lot of old school fans, they were only watching for a few of their old time favourites. With the WrestleMania streak over, it felt like they just read the final chapter of a book and there was nothing left to read, so they closed it. And number 1, the 2001 invasion angle. WCW and ECW were dead, and the WWF was now in full control. Despite that, some fans of the now dead wrestling company stuck around and watched WWF for a bit. Don't get me wrong, a lot of people quit as soon as it was announced that WWF had purchased those companies, but a lot didn't. They wanted to see how their former heroes got on in the WWE, and the answer was not well. DDP, Booker T and RVD were the only real stars of the alliance, and the group was made to look like a joke all the time. DDP was turned into a stalker character for some reason, the complete opposite of his WCW character. This rubbed fans the wrong way. Booker T was a joke, who was made fun of all the time, but there was still hope that the real stars of WCW could join up with the invasion angle at any moment, and this might be what kept a lot of people watching. The hope, but it never materialised during the invasion angle. So when Survivor Series 2001 took place and the WWF won and ended the story, what was the point in continuing if you're an ECW or WCW fan? Do not underestimate the amount of fans who quit watching wrestling entirely on this night. There's literally millions. So that's the list. 10 moments you stopped watching the WWE as chosen by you, the fans. I hope I got a good selection of recent moments and distant memories. Let me know the moment you stopped watching if I didn't mention it. I should probably do one of these for WCW now, as you seem to like these. And if you don't agree with that, I'll put your girl on her knees.